This video is part 2 of my 5-part series that I'm doing on my book, which is called Studies in Qur'anic Language and Exegesis. In part 1, we went over the death of Jesus Christ in the Quran and early tafsir, and in this video, we'll be dealing with the second chapter of my book, which delves into Muhammad and Quranic eschatology. With that being said, it's time to bring up the fact that the early Islamic sources present a consistent narrative that Muhammad and his first followers expected that the end of the world would arrive within their own generation. One of the clearest expressions comes from Sahih Muslim, where the Prophet boldly declared that he and the last hour had been sent with each other, like two fingers held together. This hadith is reported by Sahal son of Sa'ad, that heard Allah's messenger saying, "I and the last hour are close to each other, like this." And he, in order to explain it, pointed by joining his forefinger and the one next to the thumb and the middle finger together. This would show that the hour was not a far-off event, as it was held as an immediate relation to his mission. Even the Quran reinforces the same sense of urgency, with unmistakable grammar. Take, for instance, the event where the Prophet apparently splits the moon, which is a cosmic event that is directly tethered to the end times, as a sign of its nearness and closeness. Being done by the Prophet himself, might I add, being done during the Prophet's lifetime in the 7th century. Surah Al-Qamar, the 54th chapter of the Quran, goes on to say in verse 1, "The hour has drawn near, and the moon has split in two." The verb "ektarabati," or has drawn near, is in perfect tense, which means the actions are completed or existing in relation to another time, linking past actions to the present. In other words, in this particular case, the end has already drawn near, not will draw near. To be clear, the literary style and the context that will soon be examined shows that the events of the end times was believed to have already begun to approach during the lifetime of the Prophet, and this verse is abundantly clear of that. It is important to note that the Quran does not hint or even offer a second moon-splitting narrative, as plenty of modern Muslim scholars have battled with this and have forced doctrines out of their interpretation that there will be a repeated event of the moon split, despite the literary content of the Quran denying such narratives. In fact, early Muslim commenters were quite clear when talking about this matter. For instance, Ibn Abbas, who was a companion and cousin of the Prophet, offers a clear interpretation that gives an open and shut case, as he provides explicit commentary on Surah Al-Qamar 54 verse 1. And from his narration on the authority of Ibn Abbas, that he said in the interpretation of Allah, saying, "The hour drew nigh, the hour drew nigh," he said, "The coming of the hour drew nigh by the advent of Muhammad and the coming down of the smock, and the moon was rent into twain." This is also another sign of the closeness of the Day of Judgment. This explanation directly ties the nearness of the hour to two events that occurred during the Prophet's lifetime: the advent of Muhammad and the miraculous splitting of the moon. It is worth noting that Ibn Abbas confirmed that the final reckoning had already begun to approach during the Prophet's lifetime, so much so that his commentary doesn't even hint at a distant future fulfillment. The reoccurring narrative of the end times being presented as a near approaching event is unmistakable. Take for instance 21 verse 1 itself, where Muhammad tells his observers and audience in Mecca that mankind's reckoning has drawn near, while the audience themselves are yet turning away, remaining in heedlessness. The time of the people's judgment has drawn near, yet they are heedlessly turning away. The verse does not warn of a distant apocalypse, rather quite the contrary, as Muhammad is quite literally warning his observers of an end times that will happen within their own lifetime, that they themselves are not recognizing, as the language used is particularly immediate and confrontational, as the verse seems to be situating the nearness of the hour within the lived experience of Muhammad's own bystanders, within the 7th century. Yet more than 14 centuries later, in the 21st century, that reckoning still has not arrived, giving us a continued absence that exposes a disconnect between the Quran's presentation and expectations and historical reality. In conclusion, the language that is used in the Quran ultimately and correctly becomes misleading. It is precisely this failure of expectation that exposes the oft-repeated and now embarrassing title attributed to Muhammad as the warner, which brings me to the fact that throughout the Quran, Muhammad is repeatedly challenged by his opponents to prove his prophethood through signs and miracles, yet the Quran deflects this claim, stating that Muhammad is only a warner. Take, for example, Quran 46 verse 9. "Say, I'm not the first messenger ever sent, nor do I know what will happen to me or you. I only follow what is revealed to me, and I am only sent with a clear warning." The reason this is important is because Muhammad is constantly treated as a warner for the end times, throughout both the Quran and the sayings and teachings of the Prophet, i.e. the Sunnah. We have seen that Muhammad didn't merely warn us of a distant apocalypse. Rather, he saw himself as the final warner, standing shoulder to shoulder with the hour itself. as the biggest miracle that is attributed to Muhammad is the splitting of the moon. So yes, he pointed to signs like the splitting of the moon, and he told his observers that the reckoning of the days was approaching them in the 7th century. But that is not all. He also destroyed symbols that could only be standing at the end times, to show a revival of paganism. Of course, I'm speaking of the pagan shrine known as Dur Khalaza, which was often referred to as the Kaaba of Yemen. Muhammad is reported to have made a specific end times prophecy involving the shrine's physical integrity during the events that would unfold during the end times. He prophesied that a revival of paganism would revolve around this particular site. Take, for instance, the hadith found in Sahih al-Bukhari, 7116. Allah's messenger said, "The hour will not be established till the buttocks of the women of the tribe of Daus move while going around Diyal Khalaza." Diyal Khalaza was the idol of the Daus tribe, which they used to worship in the pre-Islamic period of ignorance. Yet, within the same authentic tradition, Muhammad orders the immediate destruction of that very shrine, as a companion of the Prophet by the name of Jarir ibn Abdullah al-Bajali recounts that Muhammad instructed him to march against Dur Khalaza, whereupon Muhammad ordered Jarir ibn Abdullah al-Bajali and his men to destroy the temple and kill whoever they found there. Sahih al-Bukhari 3823. Jarir bin Abdullah narrated there was a house called Dur Khalaza in the pre-Islamic period, and it was also called Al-Kaaba Al-Yamaniya or Al-Kaaba Ashamiya. Allah's messenger said to me, "Will you relieve me of Dur Khalaza?" So I left for it with 150 cavalrymen from the tribe of Amas, and then we destroyed it and killed whoever we found there. Then we came to the Prophet and informed him about it, and he invoked good upon us and upon the tribe of Amas. Prophecy presupposes the continued existence of Dur Khalaza into the eschatological period, since a revival of worship cannot occur at a site that no longer exists. Yet Muhammad personally ensured its destruction. The only coherent explanation is that he expected the signs of the hour to begin unfolding during or shortly after his own lifetime. To make this point explicit and unavoidable, the argument can be stated formally as follows. Premise 1. According to Sahih al-Bukhari, the Prophet Muhammad foretold that one of the signs of the hour would be that women from the tribe of Daus would dance around and worship Dur Khalaza, a pre-Islamic idol. Premise 2. In another hadith, also in Sahih al-Bukhari, Muhammad ordered Dur Khalaza to be destroyed. This was carried out by Jarir ibn Abdullah al-Bajali during the Prophet's lifetime. Premise 3. A prophet who expects the fulfillment of a sign centuries after his death would not logically take urgent personal military action against the condition required for that sign, as such a prophecy would be temporarily distant and would not require immediate intervention. Conclusion. Therefore, Muhammad's prophecy concerning Dur Khalaza, combined with his decision to destroy it during his lifetime, indicates that he expected the signs of the end times to begin unfolding within or shortly after his own lifetime. This expectation of imminence is made explicit in another hadith, which has an authentic narration that has been preserved in Sahih Muslim, which seems to liken the coming of the hour in terms of a single human lifespan, where Muhammad himself implied that the end of the world would occur before a child who was present while he was speaking would reach old age. Anas bin Malik reported that a person asked Abdullah's apostle, "When would the last hour come?" Thereupon, Allah's messenger, may peace and blessings be upon him, kept quiet for a while, then looked at a young boy in his presence, belonging to the tribe of As-Sanua. "If this boy lives, he would not grow very old, till the last hour would have come to you." Anas said that this young boy was of our age in those days. Sahih Muslim 2953b. Every one of these elements I've brought up in this video is rooted in the most authoritative sources and speaks and illuminate each other on the fact that the end was expected to unfold soon after or during the Prophet's lifetime. The literary language is not vague, and the grammar is not ambiguous. The expectation was most concrete, urgent, and immediate. Yet 14 centuries have passed, and the hour has not arrived. Time itself becomes the most valued critic on my behalf, and assuredly made it quite easy to demonstrate how flawed the Qur'anic expectations are. An all-knowing God prescribing the end times to be near in the 7th century is most damning, as we get more distant from that ancient time. In fact, with every minute that passes, and as time continues, the more the original message of imminence stands exposed.
I've been different my whole life since a child with it. Show them they could do it all for God. Yeah, that's my mission. All the underdogs got a voice, now I'm loud with it. Mama taught me humility early, I'm not proud with it. Confidence is when you have the knowledge that it's God winning. I worked hard to justify the zeros in the checks. Written gold in my mouth, got a first place smile with it. Of course the eagles and the pigeons gon' fly different. I've been different my whole life since a child with it. Show them they can do it all for God. Yeah, that's my mission. All the underdogs got a voice, now I'm loud with it. Mama taught me humility early, I'm not proud with it. Confidence is when you have the knowledge that it's God winning. I worked hard to justify the zeros in the checks. Written gold in my mouth, got a first place smile with it. Of course the eagles and the pigeons gon' fly different. I'm the best around with it, yeah, I know you heard me. Like I'm David Goggins, cause you really can't hurt me. Like my name was Giannis, 34 on the jersey. Respect was never given, I had to earn.